you are in for a treat today, because our guest is really a very special person. How many of you occasionally have guests over for Shabbat at your home? A lot of us. So, like, how many guests do you normally have? 2, 4, 6? Well, our special guest regularly has 85 people to his home on Shabbat. Regularly. Because that's the max that he could kind of fit, he sets up hundreds of other people to spend Shabbat with Jews that are observant, that keep Torah, that keep mitzvot, that keep Shabbat, so that they can get an experience. We're fortunate and we're privileged today to have someone that makes a tremendous impact on the Jewish people and does Avodat Hashem. And that's a person who, for that alone, despite the fact that he's here and he's speaking in our yeshiva, and anyone that's here and speaking in our yeshiva should get tremendous respect. Rabbi Ben-Zion Klatzko deserves your absolute utmost respect. And I know as soon as he starts, he's not only going to get your respect, he's going to have your attention, because he's really great and he's really fantastic. So without further ado, I introduce to you Rabbi Ben-Zion Klatzko. Please give him full respect and attention.
Very nice. Splash zone. Last time I was here was 3 years ago, and it was memorable. I came over with a really good feeling about the Yeshiva of Flatbush. My relatives, my cousins went here, the Knowles, and it was really my first Knowles. Are they here? Any Knowles here? Okay, don't raise your hands. And I was really pleased to receive another invitation. Let me explain to you about this Shabbat invitation thing before I even begin. So, first of all, when you clap, it should be for my wife, not for me. I'm like the figurehead, but she's the one who cooks and bakes. So I will convey your applause to her. She makes about 300 meals a week. And yes. Now, as far as setting people up for Shabbat, so it's a little bit different. I don't get on the phone and set people up. I have a website and an app that you can check out. And we set up 10,000 people a week for Shabbat. And the name of the app or the website is called Shabbat.com, obviously. Shabbat.com. And I will let you know, for those of you that have never, anyone here ever hear of Shabbat.com, raise your hand. Okay, we have, okay. It's a little bit tied in to what I want to say today, because years ago I did not know that it would become such a big thing. Shabbat.com today is a website and an app that has won many awards. It's literally Facebook for Jews. It looks like Facebook, but it's orange, and you share pictures and videos and friends. And today it's in 134 countries and in 6,000 cities. So it's okay. No, you don't have to come for that. But what that means is that one day when you take a year off after 12th grade to go to Israel, and you want to find a place in Haifa or Ramat Gan or Netanya, you just punch in, show me all the hosts in Netanya, and I'll give you all the hosts, and you could look at them and click and see that there. So we started that, and thank the Almighty, it just won a major award in Israel as being the best way to connect Jews in the world. So if you have a smartphone, you could look it up when you travel. It's nice. And this is not for you yet, but we decided once we're going to do that, let's do matchmaking as well, because a lot of the people who travel are single. And today, through our network, we make one shidduch a week. Baruch Hashem. Now, I tell you this not to pat myself on the back. Thank God, it's growing. It still could grow more. I tell you this, and you'll see why in the end. Okay? My day job is not Shabbat.com. My day job is I'm the National Director for Colleges in North America for Jewish Life. So, when you go to a college and you look out for Jewish Life, I probably will be involved unless you go to a very small college. But just this morning, I wasn't sure if I would make it. I just flew in from Eugene, Oregon. I arrived 7 this morning. Not worth going to Eugene, Oregon, unless you're from Oregon. But you're from Oregon? Okay. And in a way, when I travel the country, it makes me a little bit sad. And I'll tell you why. You sitting here before Yom Kippur are the best and the finest that we Jewish people have to offer. Your academic studies are fantastic. Your Jewish passion is wonderful. You're well balanced. You're motivated. When you go onto a college campus, which is what I do, when I go to Florida, UF and UCF, in Gainesville and Orlando, with over 13,000 Jewish students, they cannot pull together a minyan. In 13,000 students, you can't get 10 people in the room to say the mincha like you guys just said. My son, who lives in Israel, called me and asked me a question. He called me right before I drove here. And he said he asked for his blessing before Yom Kippur. And then he said, I have a question. He's a really good kid, so you have to know that's where it's coming from. He's 25 years old. And he said, when we say the Alchet, Ashamnu, Bogadnu, when we say Zadnu, we did things on purpose. We made Hashem angry on purpose. We did Averot on purpose. He says, to be honest, I don't remember doing anything wrong on purpose. I'm sure I messed up, but should I just say it anyways? What do I think? I don't think he said, for certain this year, I didn't do anything on purpose against Hashem. It's a very sincere question. He's a good kid, so I know where it's coming from. And I told him, I think you could have this in mind. Even if you never did anything yourself, but we have a concept called Omek Hadin, which means the ripple effect of our actions. So when we do something, if other people learn from it, if they learn good, that's great. But if they learn from our actions, we're also responsible. When I'm on campus and I see a student walking by and I want to know if they're Jewish, I just did this yesterday throughout the afternoon in Eugene. I asked them, are you Jewish? Just now in Temple University, the rabbi and the rebbitzin, they're new on campus. They actually printed up shirts that said on it Jewish with a question mark. They had it professionally made by an advertiser. And a lot of people came over, yeah, I'm Jewish. But a lot of people, when you ask them, they don't even want to admit that they're Jewish. So I have 11 children, thank God. And I have one of my children's a 13-year-old. Is that for the 11 children? Because my wife should be getting that one as well. Anyways, my 13-year-old son was at the airport with his brother, and they were flying back from Israel, not on El Al, a different airline. And as the lady behind the counter was making my 13-year-old son's ticket, I guess imitating his father, he said to the lady, looks at her and says, are you Jewish? So she looks at him and she says, as it happens, I am, but I don't believe in labels. I think we're just all humanity. We shouldn't have labels. We're just human. We're just humanity. So my 13-year-old kept quiet. And then a few moments later, the lady behind the counter says, okay, and now who's this next to you? Is that your brother? So my son says, well, I don't really believe in labels. I think he's just a human. Oh, I saw. So the lady doesn't know what to do. She hears my son saying, I don't believe in labels. We're all, guys up here, we're all just human. So the lady says back to my son, well, it's different. I was asking you if he's your brother because I want to know if you're family. So my 13-year-old looks at this lady and said, that's why I asked you if you were Jewish. Isn't that sweet? Now, you never know the ripple effect of your actions. And I want to give you a message, and I know I'm speaking very short here, so if you could take away this one message, then my job here certainly is done. It's an incredibly important message. When Hashem made you in the world, Hashem decided that the world needed you. And the Gemara says that every single person has within them a destiny to do something great. Every person, every single person is supposed to create an effect around them. But many of us don't appreciate that. So I want to share with you a story. Very important story. There was a boy named Neil whose father passed away. And his mother, whose name was Sophie, so Sophie says to her son Neil, listen, we've got to drop Judaism because there's no time for Judaism. It's just me and you. I'm a Russian lady. I work in a sweatshop. You're guys, you're right in front of me. You are an orphan. Let's just be honest. There's nobody but you and I in the world. We can't afford to do Shabbat. We can't afford to do kosher. We can't afford to do any of this because anything that we do will distract you. And you've got to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. You've got to make a living. And I can't have anything distracting you. It's just you and I in the world. So Neil, 5 years old, doesn't quite understand what his mom's trying to say. But the next week, the mother went Friday night and brought Neil to McDonald's, and they ate on a Friday night. Instead of Kiddush, instead of Hamotzi, instead of Shabbat, that was it. And Neil grew up without Judaism, even though his father, who had passed away, was very proudly Jewish. When Neil was in 7th grade, he was walking down the street, and someone saw Neil, and they said, excuse me, you're Neil, your father was Hirsch, wasn't he? I knew your father, he was a great man. He probably would have wanted you to stick to Judaism. So Neil says, my mom doesn't let. Listen, says the man to Neil, there's an after-school program called Yabi. Why don't you go? It's free. You can learn a little bit. You can keep up your studies. My mom's never going to let me go to a Jewish school. She's afraid that if I go to school, I'm going to grow a beard and I'm going to go around begging like this. She said, listen, says the man, ask your mom, beg your mom. Your dad would have wanted it. I knew your dad. He goes home. He says, Mom, I want to learn a little about Judaism. Dad would have wanted me to. No, I know what's going to happen. You're going to want to do Shabbat and kosher, and then forget it. You're going to be a beggar. I need you to be focused on your career. Focus. But Neil would not give up, and he begged his mom, and he told his mom, listen, I will get straight A's, I promise you. Let me go to Yabi. And eventually his mother agreed. And Neil, throughout high school, went to Yabi after school, and he learned a little bit about Judaism. When he finally went to college, he was excited. He's no longer under his mother's thumb. It's his opportunity to learn about Judaism. So he went to the local Hillel director, and he said, can I have coffee with you? I have questions. I need those questions answered. And he sat down with the Hill director, and the director could not answer his questions. He had philosophical questions, deep questions, questions that had bothered him for years. And this guy was not a rabbi, and he could not answer the questions. And Neil was frustrated. I waited my entire life to get my questions answered. I'm finally in college, and I can't. What am I going to do? He had an idea. He opened up a phone book, and he called all the local rabbis in town. In one synagogue, the secretary hands the phone to the rabbi, and Neil says to the rabbi, listen, I'm a local student in the college. I want to learn Torah. Would you learn Torah with me weekly? And the rabbi said, I'll be happy to, but you understand I have to charge because I have to make a living as well. It'll be $25 a session. I'll be glad to learn with you as long as you need. Now, Neil did not have $25 an hour to pay the rabbi, and this was in the 1960s. 25 was real money. So he didn't know what he was going to do. He can't ask his mom. His mom would be horrified, learning Torah with a rabbi. So right after that phone call, he went to the local supermarket and said, do you need anyone to stock shelves? I'll stock the shelves for you. Pay me. I'll work for you. And the supermarket said, we could always use somebody. Sure, we'll hire you. And that's what Neil did throughout college. He took a full workload, and after college, at the end of the day, when he finished his homework, he ran to the supermarket. He stocked shelves until his muscles bulged and ached, all in order to have money to pay the rabbi to study Torah with him. And that's called wanting it. When Neil graduated college, he decided he was going to become a doctor. And to be a doctor, you have to go to medical school interviews. And he had a question. Should I go in with the yarmulke? Should I go in with the kippah? And the reason this was a question was that in the 1960s, anti-Semitism was very overt. It was very obvious. And if you walked in to most medical schools with the yarmulke on, they're like, thank you, but no thank you. And so his question really was, which hat sits on top? Is it the Jew hat or is it the doctor hat? You see, all of us wear many hats. You're a son or a daughter, you're a sister or a brother, you're an American, you're a New Yorker, you're a Jew, you're a student. All these are obligations or hats. And what we decide in our life all depends on which hat sits on top. If there's a businessman who also happens to be a father and his kid is in a play that evening, but a big business deal is going down, does he skip his kid's play? Or does he tell the business partner, I can't do it, I have to be there for my son? Well, it all depends which hat sits on top, the businessman hat or the parent hat. Every question that we have as an adult boils down to which hat sits on top. One of the things I did before I became national director is I was a rabbi at UCLA. And at that time, I was also a rabbi for the Hollywood crowd. And for many years, I gave a lecture the first Wednesday of every month to a lot of very famous people. I had the vice president of Warner Brothers, Sony, and Disney are all my students. The writer of the show Friends and Third Rock from the Sun, Malcolm. They're all Jews, by the way. They're all Jews, and if you like a little name dropping, I just made a match, because we're a matchmaker, with the daughter of Christoph Waltz. You may or may not know who he is. Christoph Waltz? No, he is the Django Unchained, Inglourious Bastards. Anyways, yeah, you know them? So his daughter's a Jew. His daughter's a Jew. He married a Jew, and we made her match, and she just had a baby girl this morning. First match. Anyways, I'm mentioning this because one of my students is a score writer. What's a score writer? It's the one who writes the music for movies. And his name is Ira Newborn. And he wrote the music for a lot of movies that you know, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And 16 candles that you probably don't know. You know 16 candles. Anyhow, Ira Newborn, coming to my class, decided he wants to do Shabbat. And the second week that he decided he wanted to do Shabbat, the studio called him. The studio said, listen, we need you to write a score to be ready for Saturday night. And they told this to him Friday afternoon. And so Ira told me I didn't know what to do. Which hat sits on top? The Jewish hat or the score writer hat? And then he said, you know what? I was confused. Because I'm also an Angelino. I'm also an American. I'm also a Republican or a Democrat. I don't remember. I'm also a father. I'm also a husband. And he said, not only did I not write the score, I did not go to work all week. All week. I stayed in my house and I paced back and forth like a lion, shuffling and reshuffling, ordering and reordering my hats. Okay. I'm a score writer, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an American, I'm a Jew, I'm an Angelino. No, I'm an Angelino, I'm a score writer, I'm an American, I'm a Jew. And he said, I couldn't figure out what's my identity. And at the end of the week, he called up the studio and he said, I will always be a Jew before a score writer. Never again ask me to write a score on Saturday on my Shabbat. Neil had that same issue. Should I go in with the yarmulke to say my Judaism comes before my medical school career, or should I take it off? Neil decided he's going to walk into every single interview with the yarmulke perched on his head, and if they don't want him, says Neil, then I don't want them either. I want them to accept me with my Judaism. And Neil said that the first few medical schools, right when he walked in, he saw their eyes drift to the top of his head, and he saw their eyes glaze over like, nah, we're not taking this guy. He's Orthodox, religious, we don't want it. Eventually, Neil did get accepted, yarmulke and all. And the very first week, the professor said, there's going to be a quiz on Saturday. And Neil goes over to the professor and says, I can't take it on Saturday. I'm Jewish, I'm religious. He says, your name is Neil, right? You don't have to. I understand, I get it. You could take it on Sunday. There was another Jew in the class whose father was an Orthodox rabbi, but he didn't want to make waves when he came in, so he took the yarmulke and he stuffed it in his back pocket. But he would never consider breaking Shabbat. So he went over also to this professor and says, I also can't take it on Saturday. Professor says, why not? He says, I keep Shabbat. He says, no, you have to take it or you're going to fail. He said, but you just told Neil he could take it on Sunday. He said, no. You're not Neil. You see, Neil is a Jew by principle. He walks in with the yarmulke as if to say, I am proud to be Jewish. Says the professor, I'm Jewish, I get it. I'm not religious, but I get it. But you, I saw what you did. I saw out of the corner of my eye that right when you walked in, you stuffed the yarmulke in the back pocket. So you're a Jew by convenience, and I don't inconvenience myself for a Jew by convenience. You'll take it on Saturday or you'll fail. And this guy had a very tough time throughout medical school with this professor. What happened to Neil? This one young son of a widowed Russian mother. He never had to take a quiz on Shabbat. He became fully Shabbat observant. He continued to study with that rabbi, and eventually Neil got married to the daughter of a rabbi. And he had many children. And those children had many children. And today Neil, as an older man, has nearly 100 Shomer Shabbat grandchildren. From one man came 100. And I know this story. Because Neil is my dad. And I think about I think about the 10,000 people a week who find Shabbat on the website, on Shabbat.com. And I think about all the people who found their shidduch. And I think about my brothers and sisters, each one of them leaders in their community, each one of them spreading Torah, spreading love of Hashem. And I think that all it would have taken to break this is my dad taking the yarmulke and stuffing it in his back pocket. It would have changed history for thousands of people forever and ever. We're right before Yom Kippur, and our actions mean something. My wife asked me, why did you agree to come to the Yeshiva Flatbush? You just flew in. I was literally home for 2 hours from Oregon. I'm exhausted. She said, why did you come? I said, there's one reason. Because 3 years ago when I came, I thought I made an impact. So I'm going to drive 2 hours from Muncie. I'll speak for 20 minutes and I'll drive 2 hours back. Because there's 500 people, 400 people, hundreds and hundreds. And you know what I'm looking at here? You know who I'm looking at? I'm looking at Neil. Because you're the Neil of your kids. Each one of you, one day, could have a kid who stands up here and says, because my parent was brave enough and strong enough, I was able to accomplish. So I want to give you a blessing, right? Blessings are a good thing. I want to give you a blessing. Like my son said, you're all family. If you're Jewish, you're family. I want to give you a blessing that the ripple effect of your actions should spread far and wide if your actions are good. And when you decide to do Shabbat in a beautiful way, when you decide to pray with all of your heart and all of your tears, when you decide to do acts of kindness that other people see and they learn from you, that the ripple effect, which one day after 120 years will greet you with love and will greet you with honor, because you've changed the world in the same way that Neil did in the story. I wish you all a Gemar Chasima Tova.